What's up, YouTube? This is going to be kind of a very long video of me just ranting about nodachi, their historical usage, the usage that I get out of them, where you can pick them up, a couple good companies you can buy from, so on and so forth. So I'm starting with my three shorter nodachis that you can buy today. I wanted to showcase ones that you could go on a website and get relatively the exact same model as these. So starting at the bottom, this is the dremsword Unakubi Zakuri nodachi. It is made out of mono steel 1095, so it is not clay tempered, but it is a good blade. It came nice and durable. My friends have used this one, and they've hit here on like hard plastic and wood and hasn't really rolled an edge or chipped or anything. So for this particular steel, it seems like they know what they're doing when it comes to the tempering. This one is a really unique style because it doesn't have like a large tsuba, so this handguard here is really small. It gives it a really clean, elegant look, especially when it's in the saya. The saya is this kind of eggshell pattern, which I really like because it's very Japanese and it looks really, really cool. Has a little bit nicer sageo, not by a lot, but it is tied in a really cool knot, so I left it. Normally I untie these, but I just like the way this one looked, so I kept it how it is. It has a battle wrap style to where it doesn't have the traditional diamonds. It comes to a cross section here with the manuki in the middle. This one's extremely comfortable to use. Only caveat with this one, I pretty much immediately spray lacquered the suka because it was pretty loose to move around. Now it won't budge at all. I'm usually outside with mine. I don't practice indoors or anything, so my hands get wet, they get dirty, so it just lacquering just makes sense. Even if the ito is actually tight, I still usually spray lacquer just to protect everything underneath. Now you don't have to do that if you're not going to use it a ton, but since I usually try to get out and cut with like all my swords, I do, because I don't want to risk messing anything up. Now, one of the caveats is if you lacquer something, you're going to sometimes make it impossible to take it apart. Sometimes they don't put it in the correct spot when they punch the hole for the manuki here, and then you can't disassemble it. So just remember that if you're going to do that, you kind of have to pay attention. If you want to be one of those people who takes apart their whole sword, cleans the whole thing, then you might want to avoid lacquering. Just a little caveat with this one. Next up is the hanbon forge odachi. This is how the sword comes standard. Comes with a bohi, and it just got a classic shinogi zakuri style. It has kind of a demon motif here, which is kind of cool, and it has this black semigawa with green ito. This one came really tight. The ito was great. I didn't even lacquer it for a really long time, but then I started lacquering everything, and I did to this one as well, just so that it didn't come loose. The end cap here is the only thing that's slightly temperamental, but so far that hasn't given me any issue, and I've used this one the most. I think I've used this sword more than any other sword I own. This sword is it's just a beast all around. This one in particular, I chose the 1060 steel option. 1060 for the nodachi is nice because, especially if you're beginning and you're not very proficient with cutting, it's durable but takes a really nice keen edge, and it holds an edge for a really long time. In my personal experience, I've only had to resharpen this once. It stayed very sharp for a really long time. Comes with the shoestrings ago, nothing to write home about. One thing that you're going to get with odachi is the price bracket to get in is a little bit higher. When it comes to quality, all three of these, at least in the ito wrap, I would say at this point in the way the market works, this is 200 to 250 level quality. But sometimes these can run you $400 to $500, depending on where you buy from. These three are rather affordable options, but they all have different caveats. So this one I just picked up. I got this off a seller on eBay, and I like this one because it has a hanbon. It is a T10 differentially hardened, clay tempered, with a nice little triple polish. So it's got a mirror here, kind of a dark gray, and then that light gray. I'm a huge fan of that style for my swords because it's both pretty to look at and just ridiculously sharp. Like out of the box, this one is the sharpest I've gotten in this size. All three of these are 35.5 inches. And to me, these are basically katanas. I don't view them as like extra long swords. They are much closer to what I would consider my size of a sword. I can draw and sheath them with zero issues, and I can do basically everything I could do with a katana with this one at this point, but I wasn't always able to do that. So if you're thinking of starting out with an odachi, you might want to also get a very like simple regular sized katana. Just to showcase kind of how big they actually are, I'm going to show you them next to a regular size katana. Okay, so as you can see here, one thing you're going to get if you buy any of these is a much longer suka. Now, there are tons of different schools of Japanese swordsmanship. Some people love the big sukas, some people hate the big sukas. I personally like a super long suka because there's a lot more variation I can do when it comes to my form. This is also kind of a longer suka for the size katana it is. I believe this is a 12.5. A lot of people prefer a 10.5, which gets you kind of like here. I actually like smaller handles for this size because it allows me to kind of whip the sword around a little bit easier. But this particular model is a Jiku katana, and I'll be using it as my benchmark for kind of a standard size sword. So as you can see, when you look at this one next to the nodachi, there's a pretty big chunk of the cutting edge that you have an advantage of. So there's way more reach. You can, you don't have to extend your arm nearly as much to land a cut with a nodachi, which really does change the way that you use a nodachi. One of the things I see pretty often when it comes to nodachi is a lot of people who try to use them exactly like a katana, and then they end up just getting dragged around by the blade. One of the things I've noticed with the nodachi that helps me use it is I think of everything in kind of a circular square motion. So my legs are square and planted, and they follow my arms. My right arm moves with my right leg, and I keep everything as wide and firm of a base as possible. Now, you don't have to do this nearly as much when you're using a shorter sword because the shorter sword is easier to fling around. But when you start using blades that weigh more, you have to really understand where your legs are going, and you have to plant yourself a little bit more. These are lighter when it comes to the nodachi. So this one is extremely light. I think this is only 2 pounds, or 2.5 pounds. At least mine is. I have to double check. I could be completely wrong on that, but this thing feels ridiculously light. And one of the reasons for that is that it is a unokubi zakuri. So halfway up the blade, you get this thin taper. It does one of two things. It lowers the weight quite a bit. It makes it a very whippy blade. You can snap this thing around really quickly. But when you are actually cutting with it too, this thin profile makes it really easy to just lob right through things. Now, durability wise, I'm not quite sure how this would do up against tatami or bamboo. Because of that super thin profile, it probably would have a propensity to bend or snap or chip, but I have no idea. The hanbon forge, I believe, is a 3-pound blade, maybe a little bit over. The bohi on nodachi ends up making quite a bit of a difference. So when you get something with a bohi, it can help cut the weight quite a bit. But one thing to know with this one is Hanbon Forge basically did no tapering with this. It's basically the same thickness up here as here. So even though it kind of looks like it might be lighter, it feels a lot weightier. So you don't necessarily have to move through your targets as hard as something like with this. You kind of have to fling this one to get it through the target. This one I've only used in one session, but so far it's really excellently executed. So it has a really nice thin top profile, and you can see that it has a geometric yukote here, and it flares on the kasaki, which is really nice because you can get feedback even though it doesn't have a bohi. Also, it starts out in really nice and thick, and it thins out. So far, even just from one session, I can already tell this one's going to become like a new favorite for me. Quality wise, these three are all relatively the same. When you get them, the ito is tight enough. The ito on this is probably the tightest of the three. These two, I'm gonna lacquer this one. I needed to lacquer this one, but these two have relatively the same amount of quality when it comes to the ito wrap. It's not horrible, but it's not great. It could be a lot better. The tsuba on this is an iron tsuba. The tsuba on this is brass, and I think this might even be like plated brass as well to look silver. Personally, I really enjoy when a sword has some presence to it, but I really think that one of the things you need to understand with an odachi is that there isn't necessarily like a rule book for it. So you might think something is going to weigh a ton, but then you'll get it and it has all these like different things with it. So like this one feels like it weighs nothing, but they're relatively the same weight as each other. Once you get things that are longer, it really starts to kind of add up. So if you start out with one of these, just keep in mind that it's gonna probably tire your arms out quite a bit, and you're gonna kind of need to build muscle and get used to them. So one of the reasons that I enjoy nodachi so much is that they are kind of a mystery weapon. When it comes to European fencing, there's schools for montandes, there's school for sawai-handers, but there's not really a lot of Japanese schools that practice the longer sword. And something to remember too, when you're talking about just like swords in general, this is really the size of a longsword. Most longswords are 33 to 34 inches. This is a 35-inch blade. Longswords also can be even longer, but it's funny because this is the standard size katana, but this is like a window in time when it comes to the size of a katana. An odachi term is just a way to describe something. Japanese terms are really simple in a sense. So originally these swords would have been called tachis, and they would have had totally different mounts to be put on armor. So when you're looking at something like this, it is an odachi because it's above the threshold, but barely, like literally just like right above the threshold of being a regular size sword and a bigger sword. I'll show you a couple more big ones, like real big ones, here in a minute, but I wanted to start with the more accessible, the easier to train, and the easier to start out with. If you're in the market for some very simple to use, affordable nodachi, these are 3 fantastic models to choose from. You will have to invest a little bit into these. They're in the 300 range, so it is definitely more of a commitment than something like this Jakku, which I got for $100. Now, something else to keep in mind is a lot of people have this misconception that people of ancient times used shorter blades because they were shorter people, and that's bullshit. That's not true at all. It really depends on warfare. It depends on what the hell was happening at the time. So during the time of big old swords, this probably would have been like 33 to 34 inches would have probably been a very common size when in the north and south court period of ancient Japan. You had samurais being like, hey, I'm buff as hell, let me show off. And so they wanted to show off with these big swords. This is on the smaller side, like way smaller side of how big nodachis can get. This is the smallest a nodachi can be to be classified as one. And really, in those times, it just was literally saying, hey, you have a tachi and it's huge, so that's an odachi. Nodachi basically just means big tachi, big sword. It's simple as hell, and it doesn't need to be complicated. These three are all from Longquan, China. They are all probably made in the same forge, or similar ones. They all have almost the exact same length and almost the exact same handle length. This one's a little bit smaller, but you get tons of leverage with this to allow you to control the cuts. When you're using one like this too, something to remember is when you're using a smaller one, your hands kind of go close together. With a nodachi, you don't need to keep your hands close together. In fact, it's more effective to have one up high and one low, because the way it cuts is just different. It's essentially a long katana, but the actual mechanics, you have to use your body differently. Your arms need to be a little bit closer together. You have to use a wider stance to be able to handle the weight, and also to drive the cuts forward. Your cuts need to come from your center when you're using one of these. They really can't come from your arms because it's going to drag you everywhere, especially if you don't have strong upper body strength. This thing will just carry you all over the field. So even these ones being shorter than the big ones I use, they're kind of like going up a weight class. If you're like a lifter or a bodybuilder or anything like that, like you don't want to just start out with one of these willy-nilly, because it will whip you around and it'll fuck you up. So yeah, these three are three extremely good options that I can endorse. I think they're great. I have been very candid on what is good and what's bad about them. If you can get over kind of a lower end Ito wrap, in my opinion, this one is actually the best one, because it's clay tempered, and I have found that clay tempered just hold their edge way the hell longer, and it makes sense because you've got a super hard surface that can keep the edge. Another thing too with these that's really cool is they will force you to get better at drawing and sheathing your sword. You will not be able to rely on being tall. Like if you have long arms and you're a tall person, you can kind of easily draw and sheath the normal size katana that's like 27, 28 inches. When you get into one of these that's 35 inches, it's like a whole lot longer. You end up realizing that you have to fully pull back your saya and you have to fully draw and release your sword. It helps kind of work your mechanics and work your hips and understand how to use it. For some people, it might be virtually impossible to do real iaito with these, and that's okay. But it is cool to have a field sword. It is cool to have something that's more of a battlefield sword, something that you can like kind of see. Like reach is everything when it comes to fighting. Like that's why we have sniper rifles. So it makes sense on a battlefield, no matter how tall you are, that you would want something longer. Because if I'm going 1v1 out in the field, I will kill you first. Like the reach is massive. So it just makes sense. There's a huge misconception that all katanas are the same size and the same shape, and it's just not true. Just like any other historical sword, there's tons of variation. One of my favorite things about the nodachi is the fact that it's a mystery. It doesn't have a lot of schools. It doesn't have a lot of like teaching you can follow or study. So there's not really any real rules when it comes to these. Whatever works best for your body and isn't, messing you up, then you should do that. I am going to talk about a few enormous ones in a moment, and those ones are definitely ones that I really want to talk about because you get up into kind of the abnormal and ridiculous when you get into the higher length nodachis. Okay, next up I'm going to talk about a custom nodachi. This is my hanbon forge large nodachi. I can't even get it fully in frame. But as you can see, it's way bigger. You can see here, this nodachi ends here, and then there's that much more reach. This sword is 48 inches. It weighs almost 5 pounds. It has a 17-inch suka with a 48-inch nagasa. This is the biggest sword I own. It is a custom job from Hanbon Forge. I do not think they make them this big anymore. I don't think they'll allow you to do it this big. I think after I got this, people started to want this size, and Hanbon was like, holy shit, please stop. Because the longer it gets, the harder it is to forge. That's just the reality of working with things like this. So this one is a extremely simple minimalist design. I went with a like dark red Ito with black Samigawa, and then these cool feathers. I call this one the Crimson Swallow. It's just my nickname I gave for it. But this thing is an absolute monster. I could not swing this thing efficiently at all when I got it. It absolutely dragged me around the field. It definitely has some serious mass behind it. One thing that I think would be really cool if manufacturers start making ones that are this big, I want them to start scaling it up, like having it start thick like that and then tapering to a higher point. Because if you look at traditional large nodachis that are around this size, they had much thicker blades, and they were even thicker on the spine too. And what that allowed is structural integrity. It's a lot less likely for something that's differentially hardened to snap if it's thicker than thinner. So a few people have gotten like the Hanwei nodachi, and that thing was amazing. It was this size, but it was like that thick and clay tempered like this all the way up the blade. Just an absolutely gorgeous sword. When I saw that one, I ended up wanting something similar, so that was why I hit up Hanbon Forge. I don't know how much this one would cost, but I do know you could get something basically identical from Ryan Sword for around 400. So that's something to keep in mind. If you see this sword and you go, holy shit, I want that, it's super big and awesome, then you can get it. This sword right here, as far as length goes, is a really nice glimpse into what most nodachi were when it comes to the, Nambakucho period. It's just over the top, like, display of strength. That's literally what these were. Their primary usage, from what I've read and understood, especially ones this big, would have been probably some very advanced samurai on a horse. Because if you think about it, you've got all this curvature, and if you're dropping that down on someone like a foot soldier, there's not a lot they can do, and it also means that you're not going to get anything lodged in someone. It's going to swoop back up. So a lot of people like to say that these were horse chopper swords. I highly doubt that, because it just doesn't make sense. Because if you were to take down horses, a musket would make more sense, a spear would make more sense, even a naginata would make much more sense than one of these. I think these were very specialized weapons that were probably used by people in the back of armies and also on horseback, because it truly does make sense if you think about it. If you had this and you dropped it down on somebody while you're going really fast, it would destroy people. A lot of things too, the amount of reach that you have with this is wild. If I'm going up against somebody who's using this and I have this, if I can hit them first, it's over. Like, if I can get this in a gap in armor and pull it out, then it's also got a shock factor because it's just so much longer. So what I like about these is this gives you just a glimpse into how long they could get. And this isn't even the longest they were. There are historical examples of ones that are huge. Okay, this is the last part of this video, and what I want to showcase here are two other excellent swords that you can purchase right now if you wanted to. This one is my stupid over-the-top idea, but this is I forget what this one was called. I call it the Scarlet odachi because I play Elden Ring and I thought this looked hella fucking cool. Like someone with Scarlet Rot used this. So you can buy this, and I believe it's, I'll put links in the bio, but I believe this one was also 400, which is kind of a steal because it's super mega long. If you see it next to this one, it's slightly shorter. I think this one's around 47 or 46 inches. But the blade is just fantastic. If you look close, you can see that it's a folded steel. And normally I'm not a fan of Damascus, but the way they do their Damascus, it's not like weird and over the top. I like the way it looks. And as I've gotten more into just swords in general, I really don't like mono steel anymore. Like, I like being able to look at something, and this thing is amazing. It came stupid sharp. I pulled some crazy double cuts with this, and I think this one is 3.5 pounds, almost 4 actually. I think it's 3.8 pounds. So it's heavier, but one thing that's crazy about it is it's got a really short handle. Like if you look at this handle and this handle, they're like almost the same size. And when I got the blue one here, I literally was like, okay, this is gonna be impossible to use because there's no like leverage. But something about the way they taper their blades, it's like magic. I don't understand. They're super easy to use. This one here is also from the same company, the same forge. This is what I call my azure nodachi. This thing is an absolute monster. I've used this thing so much. I think I've almost used it more than this one, but it is so freaking light. It's 3.4 pounds, and it's extremely long. I can comfortably use this with one hand for cuts. It's unbelievably light, and it's just a great sword in general. One thing to know with this particular sword, because it is 1060, sometimes it's not straight. I know I sent one to Katana Carl, and his was not completely like straight down the middle. This one isn't either. It's straight enough for it not to cause any real issues when I'm cutting, but that's just something to know. Anytime you make a blade this long, sometimes there's warping that happens when they quench it. This is straight as an arrow, and I think it's because it doesn't have a bohie, so it's got that rigidity to it, and it's just like a flat slab of metal. And I think when they forged this one with the like Damascus steel, I think it holds its shape a little bit better. This nodachi though is really fun because it's super light. Like I was saying earlier, a bohie makes a really big difference when the sword is this long. The other thing with these that's interesting is if you look at them, they're very straight. They have hardly any curve or sori. And if you look at the katana and the hanbon forge, large nodachi, they curve a lot. So the usage is quite different with these. It's much easier to do one-handed cuts with these and snap cuts with these because you can just do that. But they don't cut nearly as clean. You have to really understand exactly where the tip of this is going. This is nice because you can do very wide bodied cuts. You have to really understand how to widen your stance and understand your base when it comes to this and work from your core. With this one, you can mix it up quite a bit. You can do a lot more varied cuts, fast cuts. I've gotten multiple double cuts with this, meaning I stacked 2 bottles and I've gotten 2 cuts with it. It's very easy to whip this around in comparison to this one. Of course, it's never going to be as easy to whip around as something like this because this is only 2.5 pounds, but it is amazing how like usable this nodachi is. So if you were wanting to start with a big nodachi, I would recommend probably this one or this one, because they are going to treat you a little bit nicer. Something like this is really, really, really specific. I wanted something that was going to make me stronger. So it's heavy as hell. It's 5 pounds. So 5 pounds is like a lot for a sword. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but once you've got all this being the weight, it adds up fast. So these are a couple more options if you want to go even longer. I would recommend starting out with something like the green one over there that I showed you earlier, just because there's a propensity for injury as well. Like, these are sharp objects. These can hurt you really bad. So just remember that there is always a risk of injury, and the longer you go, the easier it is to cut yourself. There's just a bigger piece of a razor blade in front of you. So definitely start small, work your way up. If you're going to get into using these kind of swords, I definitely recommend getting an iaito, something that's non-sharp when you start with something. If you're going to get into using katanas in general, you should use either a bokken or iaito, just to get used to how to move your body properly, how to not hit yourself, how to not cut yourself, and things like that. Don't be stupid. Try things out, but go slow. Like, you do not have to be fantastic at something right away. I think there's a huge like misconception when it comes to training that you got to be good at stuff right when you do it, and that's just bullshit. If you are somebody who's like interested in nodachis, you can always comment and like ask me questions. I've been studying these a lot, and these are some fun examples of just closer to the historical size. Now, there are accounts of even longer ones. There's ones with like 68-inch blades, things like that, and I would absolutely love to have one of those, but most of the forges I've asked have said, no, we can't do that. If you want that thing to be functional, we physically can't. So maybe one day. But for now, these are like a few of my absolute favorites. I've really enjoyed being able to use something that's just so unique and different, and like kind of a mystery historically. Like, there's a few examples that are living in Japan that are amazing, and I want to go see them. But I'm inspired by them because the craftsmanship it took to make them the traditional way with tamahagane is just ridiculous, and they were used on the battlefield, but they were so situational that there's no like manuals. It was like specialized. It was like if a samurai wanted to be like, hey, I'm buff as hell, check this out. It's like there's definitely like a very unique kind of, I don't know, energy to these that I really, really enjoy. And it's a way to push myself too. When I got into using these, I was like, I want to be the first one to pull a double cut with a nodachi, like, and I haven't seen anybody do that, you know, and there's a lot of like challenging myself when it comes to these. I push myself to get faster and faster with these. I work out specifically to use them. I do strength training with them. I just really enjoy the whole concept of being strong enough to use the weapon and not the weapon using you. When you start using something like this, like especially this red one, this really big one, it will fling you around, and you have to kind of understand, okay, how do I move with the weapon? And it really teaches you that the weapon itself wants to go a certain direction and you have to get it there. So I think one of the things with nodachi that's like really cool is it's a journey of self-discovery. If you want to get into using these, there are very, very few schools that teach them, and the schools that do teach them are protected and guarded. Like, you can't just join them, you can't really learn from them, you have to just kind of observe them use them, and that's it. And so they really are a unique weapon in that sense, because there's no real rules when it comes to them. There's just some historical context when it comes to them. So one thing that's awesome is if you want to get into using these, all the swords I showed you today, aside from this one here, I will provide links for them so that you can, you know, purchase them if you want to. If you're somebody who wants to you know, try out a nodachi. These are all really good ones. Before I end, I will also say that the ito on this was quite loose, so I lacquered it just like I was talking about earlier. The ito on this was very tight, very well made. So if you're getting this one, it's probably going to come a little bit more put together than this one. It is, I think it's slightly more expensive, but they're very similar. I hope that companies continue to make these swords because I think they're really fun and they're really unique and they're a great challenge for people who want to, you know, grow in their martial prowess. So overall, I think nodachi is probably my favorite weapon to use. It's the most unique weapon to use because there's no rule book, and also it's just an exciting thing to be able to be like, hey, I can swing around this 48-inch blade and I can do it proficiently. It's a cool challenge, it's a spiritual challenge, it's a, you know, physical challenge, and I just enjoy using them. So hopefully that video helped you in some way, and if you were looking to purchase an odachi, hopefully seeing them up close and personal like this helps you make that decision. Mine are all beaten and bruised and scratched up because I use them all the time. But that's what they're there for. That's why they're inexpensive. It's not like this is some $6,000, you know, sword straight from Japan. It was made custom for me to use, to cut with. One thing too that's really nice about all three of these two specifically, they came extremely sharp. And this company has not failed me yet as far as sharpness goes. I've been able to use them, and they're very easy to reprofile too. Like I reprofiled this one with sandpaper and whetstone and then a strop, and it cuts like a laser beam. So what's cool about 1060 specifically is it's super easy to resharpen, but it also won't chip. It just is durable as fuck. Like if you end up hitting your stand with one of these, which will happen way more with a long sword than it will with one of these, I haven't had any issues with this, and I have hit my stand probably 20 to 30 times, just botching a cut. Same with this guy. He has not taken any sets whatsoever. Actually, there's one little set right here. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, and that's because this is a much thinner blade. So it has a lot less niku than this one. So it definitely chipped a little bit easier. I've had 0 issues with this one, and I've botched like 3 or 4 cuts with it, and it's held its edge perfectly. So that's kind of the rundown of these six super affordable odachis. If you want to purchase them, I will have links in the bio, and you can, you know, check them out. They will all be links to eBay and then the specific sites I got them from. I found that these are cheaper on eBay than the actual site that promotes them, so try to get you the best deal. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of online buzz about nodachis now, but there's not a lot of people who tell you where to buy them. There's only a few sites that sell the long ones, and that seems to be what people are after, is the extra long ones. They like the ones like that, but then they end up being like, oh, I want a longer one because, you know, I've seen in a video game they have a super long one. And so it's like, here's a couple examples of ones you can actually get that are closer to a historical, like, classic nodachi from when these were popular. Thank you for watching. I know that was like the longest video of all time, but hopefully it made sense to people. Hopefully you got some info out of it, and hopefully now you can pick one of these up and have a big ass sword on your wall. Tone Deaf out.